What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV here, back with another transfer window update. To the left of me, I have got a good friend of ours, Mark Ben Umram. A lot of you may know him from Twitter, the voice of transfers, the voice of the tier system on Twitter for Spurs. How you doing, Mark? Welcome back to the channel.
Thank you for having me. Long time friend of the channel. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Obviously, we've got a lot to speak about today. Let's start with Olivier Giroud. There's been a lot of talk about Giroud over the last couple of days. Is there anything new you can tell me on Olivier?
So I think kind of in terms of Giroud, the news broke a couple of days ago that Spurs were interested in him, and that does seem to be correct. A lot of reliable sources have confirmed that there has been a move made for Olivier Giroud. I think the question is, will Chelsea sell him to not just a top four rival, but a London rival too? And kind of the news breaking today, or the news we're getting through today, from reliable sources, is that Chelsea would be open to selling him to Spurs, even if they can get a replacement in themselves. That's what we're seeing. A lot of the reliable press are reporting today. One of the names mentioned for them is Dries Mertens from Napoli, the Napoli forward. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Chelsea not ruling it out, Spurs not ruling it out, but we're still not in that position where we can say it's going to happen. So it's a bit of an awkward one at the moment.
This is probably one that will go right down to the wire, won't it? You know, it's all down to Chelsea, basically. It's all in Chelsea's court. It's a question of, if Chelsea get someone in, it's very likely that it will happen. But if they don't get one in, then it's very unlikely. Is that what we're trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, I want to be a bit cautious. I don't want to say it's very likely it will happen. If I'm Chelsea, I don't sell him to Spurs at all. Why strengthen a team who doesn't have a striker for the rest of the season? It is a rival for the top four. Yeah. So it's interesting if Chelsea are playing the mind games here, if they genuinely are open to selling Olivier Giroud to Spurs. I think we're in a situation where Giroud would make the move. I don't think anybody's doubting that, and Spurs have an interest. But if I'm Chelsea, I don't sell him. So it's going to be a really interesting development if in the next 24 hours Chelsea we see some development and Chelsea do make a striker signing.
I mean, we've seen it before with Chelsea. You know, just in the summer they sold David Luiz to Arsenal. Obviously, we've seen this happen before, so I wouldn't be surprised if Giroud did make the move. I think it is just a case of Chelsea getting a striker. But let's move on from there. Let's move on to Willian Jose. Obviously, yesterday, a lot of reports saying that deal is dead, and he was back in the Sociedad squad yesterday, but he wasn't actually in the squad yesterday. They pulled him out again. Apparently, Willian Jose has told his fellow teammates that he is leaving the club. Is there any updates on that, or not really?
So yeah, this morning, again from semi-reliable sources, to be honest, that Willian Jose has told his teammates that he wants to leave the club. I don't think that's probably the biggest secret or the biggest bombshell. What the report goes on to say is that Willian Jose and his team and Real Sociedad are expecting one final bid from Tottenham Hotspur for his services. So I think that's going to be interesting. What we do know is that Spurs did show interest in the striker, did make an offer for him, which was deemed totally unacceptable.
Do you know what ballpark figure that was?
Sociedad. I think it was, what's been reported, it was in the region of £11 million.
So we'll offer 11.5 then.
Maybe 11.5, yeah, maybe 12 million. But I think kind of if Spurs do go back for another offer, it's got to be something, it's got to be something a lot more substantial. So those rumours are floating around, not as heavily as Olivier Giroud. So I think it's Olivier Giroud, but who would be their striker target based on what I'm hearing, but can't rule that one out either. So
it's probably just a case of that Willian Jose wants to leave, but there's no actual offers coming in. So his head's not really in the right space, but he actually wants to leave, which is interesting. But if you were Daniel Levy, if you were Jose Mourinho, would you try and push the Willian Jose deal or try push the Giroud deal?
That's a very good, $1 million question. If I was Daniel Levy, I'd probably do things a lot differently. But
but let's say these two are the only options, which they are at the moment.
I think in terms of Spurs' strategy this window, it's low risk.
Yeah.
I mean, we can see that it's low risk, or when an opportunity really presents itself. And if you're looking for a low risk, and if Chelsea really will sell Olivier Giroud to Spurs, then it's Olivier Giroud. He knows the Premier League inside out. He's very capable. We've seen it with Arsenal, Chelsea, France.
Yeah.
He's a very capable striker.
Yeah.
He wouldn't cost a lot. He would certainly cost a lot less than Willian Jose. Yes, he's older by maybe I think 6 years older.
Yeah.
But he's got the pedigree needed. And remember, a couple of years ago, we signed Fernando Llorente for a fee of £12 million, just to get a couple of years out of him. And that's what we could do similar with Olivier Giroud. It's a very Daniel Levy signing. And from what we're hearing, Jose Mourinho does like Olivier Giroud. So
the thing that worries me about this Olivier Giroud deal is that if Frank Lampard is willing to let him go to Tottenham, if Frank Lampard is not willing to have him in his squads, then is he not just past it? Is because Frank Lampard's the one seeing him week in, week out. Maybe he just doesn't have it anymore.
I think it's a completely different style of football Frank Lampard wants to play. You can see it's quick movement, it's mobility within his strikers. Olivier Giroud is not the most mobile. So I think it's just a change of approach in the manager. So I wouldn't rule too much into, kind of ability. Is he past it? It could be the case that Olivier Giroud doesn't, not necessarily agree, but isn't right for Frank Lampard's methods. So I wouldn't read too much into that. We do know he's getting on to the latter stages of his career, but no, I wouldn't look too much into that.
All right. Well, let's move on from the striker situation. There's been some sort of breaking news that's come out of absolutely nowhere, where Hojbjerg from Southampton, the central defensive midfielder, it looks like we're trying for a last-ditch move for him. Is there any news you can tell me on that?
I think just literally before we've recorded this, that news has broke. It doesn't seem right to me. Spurs trying to sign the Southampton captain or any club captain with a little bit more than 24 hours left of a transfer window. For this to happen, there has to have been something in the pipeline for a while now. And I know Southampton have just come out through the press and said they have no intention of selling Hojbjerg. So it was very much surprising. Not that Spurs would be interested, but why Southampton would sell their club captain with 24 hours left of the transfer window. So the sources are okay. They're not the most reliable. It's with mixed accuracy. So that's why I'm not looking too much into this. But yeah, completely out of nowhere.
Well, I think he would be a signing that would be a good signing. Obviously, we need a central defensive midfielder. I think a striker's more of a pressing target at the moment. We really need that target man in. But I think if we did get a central defensive midfielder in, with Lo Celso and Ndombele playing in front of, a bit of protection for the defence as well. We've been crying out for one for a long time, because obviously Eric Dyer just not cutting it at the moment for me. And he's pretty much the only central defensive midfielder we've got in the squad, with Wanyama just drifting off into the abyss at the moment. But yeah, I think that would be a great signing, but how reliable the source is and how reliable this bid is actually, I don't know. But let's move on to Danny Rose. It looks like he's gone to Newcastle. It hasn't been confirmed by Tottenham, but it's been confirmed at a lot of places saying the deal has been done.
Yeah, as in by numerous sources, it looks like this deal is certainly going ahead.
Yeah.
For Danny Rose to move to Newcastle. From what other reports are saying, there were offers from other clubs that included Watford as well. So he had the option to stay in London. I think we know about Danny Rose. He's always expressed a desire to go back up north. He's always had that desire. So it looks like he gets his wish. I think a few years ago he thought by up north he was thinking Manchester United or Manchester City.
Yeah.
And now it's actually Newcastle where he's going. But it's still a good move for him. I think it's the right move now. I think we know his ongoing issues in terms of contract and injury. And I think it's just right for Spurs and the player to part ways, even though it looks like it's just going to be an initial loan deal. But hopefully that will put the wheels in motion for a permanent transfer sometime down the line. Yeah,
exactly. So if he does go, which it looks like he will, at the end of this 6-month loan, he'll only have a year left in his contract. So Newcastle will probably be able to pick him up from cheap at the end of the loan deal, won't they?
Well, you would think so, but again, with our chairman, he could be demanding outrageous fees for Danny Rose. I have to see.
Yeah, and I wonder how many of the Newcastle players Danny Rose will have to Google before he actually moves. But let's move on. Last but not least, a player which we haven't seen in a while. It's Victor Wanyama. Apparently, he could be moving out in this window.
Reports from France basically suggesting that he could be Bordeaux bound. Something that's come in this morning from some of the French press there. Nothing too much on it at the moment. I think what's been said is I think there's also some interest shown from Saint Etienne as well as Bordeaux, but nothing concrete at this stage. I think Victor Wanyama, as we know, is a player that Spurs are trying to offload this window.
And last window and the window before.
Exactly. And they've been trying to offload him for a while, and there hasn't been a suitor, or they haven't met his wage demands, or haven't been able to agree a fee with the club. So this one, there does seem to be something there, but nothing strong enough at this stage. And given, like I said, wage demands and transfer fees in the past for him and issues there, at the moment it's a wait and see game.
All right, well, that's your transfer update. I'm going to ask you one last question to put your neck out on the line a little bit, but obviously we're not going to take it as gospel if you say yes or no, but will we get someone in from now until the end of the window?
Yeah. The place we are now, as you asked me 24 hours ago, I'd say definitely.
Yeah.
We would. I think how things are shaping up now, it looks like a typical last day Spurs window where we're panicking and looking for different targets, which says to me there is no concrete plan, which worries me.
Yeah.
Putting my neck out, I'm going to say yes, but this has all the makings of a transfer window deadline day where Spurs end up disappointing fans.
Yeah, like every other window basically.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Thank you, Mark, very much for coming on. Do you want to tell people where they can find you on Twitter? A great Twitter account, especially on transfer window. You got to check it out. So what's your Twitter account?
Sure, yeah. If you want to check it out, it's at @Mark_BA12. My Twitter account, and that's where you usually find me, not behind the screen. But thank you for having me on.
All right, so thank you very much, Mark, for coming on. Make sure you do check him out on Twitter. Like, subscribe, and comment below, and tell me what you think of these targets. Tell me who you think will get in by the end of the window. And as always, come on, you Spurs.